to another episode of Top 5. Top 5 is a place where industry experts and people from around the business world come and share their best practices that you can take and put into your business immediately to help grow long-term sustainable businesses. My name is Chance Brown. I'll be your host today, and I am excited to welcome someone that I honestly lump into a very small group of people that I don't know that I'd still be in the business today if it hadn't been for them in the beginning, because I was at a very small brokerage, didn't have a ton of broker support. And so I would go around and just kind of scour the internet and copy people. And I am not above stealing other people's ideas and using them if they work and, pointing fingers if they don't. But one of those people was Jay Thompson. And back then he was known as Phoenix Real Estate Guy. And he had this blog that I read religiously, thought it was fantastic. And then he went to work as the director of industry outreach for Zillow. And so I would follow him and his interactions with people, trying to dispel all the false myths and stories about Zillow on the internet. And now I just follow him in envy because he's living like the best life ever as a retiree. So welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks, Chance. It's good to be here.
We're glad that you're here. I'm really excited, man. This has been a fun series to do because all these people like you, like Chris Smith, like Dan Stewart, who are people that I really did pay a lot of attention to just getting started, get to come on and I get to, meet some of my heroes. So I'm excited that you're here. And let's talk about why Zillow is not a bad guy.
Sure. I worked for Zillow for almost 7 years, and a big part of my job was, because I used to own a real estate brokerage prior to working for Zillow, a big part of my job was kind of acting as a liaison, so to speak, between the agent broker community and Zillow. And another big part of the job, kind of behind the scenes that most people never saw, was I helped Zillow understand how agents and brokers think, what they need, how they work, because Zillow has some really brilliant employees, but the vast majority of them never sold real estate. And a lot of them are super young, and some of them have never even spoken to a real estate agent. The developers can code anything. The PR people were geniuses, but they just didn't have that real estate connection. So I kind of helped provide that too. So as the liaison part of my job, I spent a lot of time in the social space. Some people will say defending Zillow. That really wasn't the point. The real drive behind that was to try to dispel some of the misinformation and the myths and the beliefs about Zillow. When Zillow launched was 14 years ago, almost immediately a lot of agents had some fear and trepidation about, who is this Zillow? What are they doing? Two of the co-founders also founded Expedia, which kind of crushed travel agents in many ways. So a lot of people just assumed, hey, these are Expedia guys, they killed travel agents, now they're going to kill real estate agents. And that baggage has held on for the last 14 years with some people. There are some, let's just call it what it is. There's Zillow haters out there, brand detractors, but the vast majority of that, from my experience, was just because people didn't understand Zillow's goals and missions, how they worked. And so that's why I was there. And I don't know how many agents I spoke to when I worked for Zillow, literally thousands of real estate agents. Some of them were Zillow advertisers. They paid to be premier agents and advertise on Zillow. A lot of them weren't, but it's after speaking to thousands and thousands of agents and also watching some of these agents that were premier agents, how they utilized Zillow, really taught me a lot about it. And there's a lot of things you can do with Zillow. Yes, you can write them a check and you can buy advertising, but there's lots of ways to use Zillow that don't cost a dime that I know for a fact is very, very effective. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today.
Perfect. So before we jump into that, I want to go back to what you said a minute ago about Expedia and the travel agents and all of that. Yeah, I've got a post on my blog that still gets quite a bit of readership called "Realtor Tastes a Lot Like Travel Agent." Mm-hmm. And the whole thought process of that is not to blame Zillow or anything else, but really actually to turn the mirror around and there is a paradigm shift of thinking, in my opinion, that needs to happen inside of our industry. And that shift is the same shift that you saw with the travel agents, which is, hey, I've got all this information, and we're going to call this information the MLS.
Mhm.
I've got all this information. I'm going to keep it under lock and key and hide it away from you. And therefore, I derive, you'd have to have me because that's my value. And I'm a big believer that the absolute opposite is true. That let's provide as much information as we possibly can, and there's the derivation of our value. And you know, I think the big thing that everybody bitches about with Zillow is proof of the pudding. It's this estimate. You know why this estimate works? Because it's the only one there.
Yep. There's other AVMs now, but when it first started out, it was certainly it. And the Zestimate appeals to people's inherent desire to want to know what their home is worth, and to be honest, what their neighbor's home is worth, what their boss's home is worth.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to call it real estate porn, okay, and that may not be appropriate, but there is that component of it, that voyeurism, where people just want to know. I think many people understand. I mean, look at the word Zestimate, first of all. It's the 9/10 of the word is the word estimate. It's an estimate. It's not called a Zappraisal or a Zaprice for a reason. Right. It's an estimate of a home value. And I totally get, I owned a brokerage. I was an agent before that and sold real estate for a living. I've sat across the table from people that said, well, you start talking about a CMA and people say, oh, but Zillow says my home is worth blah, blah, blah. And so I get that. I get the angst that creates. But what it really creates is an opportunity for the agent to talk to the home seller or buyer, whatever the case may be, and to prove and help prove their value.
Exactly.
So, you nailed it.
Yeah. So today we're doing top 5 ways to take advantage of Zillow at no cost, right? For an agent.
Yep.
All right.
So there's going to be 4 for no cost and 1, and talk a little bit about the cost, because I think people need to understand at least a little bit about how the Premier Agent system works.
Okay.
For no other reason than just to better understand Zillow, the company.
Gotcha. All right, let's jump in.
Okay, sure. The first thing, and this is, it's 100% free. I shouldn't say it's 100% free because it does take some time, and time is money, but it's so valuable. And that is creating a profile on Zillow. And I don't care if you can't stand Zillow or you think they're out to end your business. The undeniable fact is consumers go to Zillow. Your sellers, your buyers, whether you like it or not, they're on that site and they're looking. So you might as well be there, and you might as well understand how it works. And the profile is super powerful, and it's just what it sounds like. There's a place where you can put your picture, you can write a little about me section, it'll show your past sales. And there are tens of thousands of consumers a day, if not hundreds of thousands, that go to Zillow. And not only, sure, it's the listings that draws most of the attention to Zillow, but there are people that search agent profiles and search the agent directory. That's how I just moved from Seattle to Aransas Pass, Texas. And I didn't know any agents in Aransas Pass. It's a pretty small town. I didn't have any friends that were here that I could ask, hey, who's your agent? So the first thing I did was look at Zillow profiles. And I didn't care if they advertised on Zillow or not. I haven't worked there for 2 years. And even when I worked there, that wouldn't be a deciding factor for me in choosing an agent. But I was purely a real estate buyer at that time. I was looking to buy a house. So I started cruising the Zillow profiles. And I found a great agent. She's an amazing agent. She does happen to be a Zillow advertiser, but that's not what drove me to her. What drove me to her, to be perfectly honest, were the reviews that she had on her Zillow profile. Those are so powerful. And I know all the gotchas and the what ifs. You know, there's a lot of people think, well, they're fake, people buy them. I can tell you, as a former worker at Zillow, that review system is incredibly well vetted. Each review is manually checked by a human being, not some computer algorithm, just for some basic things to make sure it's legit. Now, that's not to say that some people don't go off to sites like Fiverr and buy reviews. That happens. Zillow has ways to catch that, and they do catch it. And Zillow will remove you from their website if they catch you buying reviews. They do that whether you're an advertiser or not. And I've told people that, and they're like, oh, yeah, right. Someone's paying Zillow $3,000 a month and you're just going to boot them out if they fake their reviews. You're darn right. It happened. I had people literally crying on the other end of the phone saying, you can't take me away from Zillow. I'm like, well, you can't get a bunch of fake reviews. It violates every terms of service and terms of use and policy that they have. So they will do that. So I don't want to get negative. The positives of reviews, they're well vetted. And again, and I know a lot of agents are kind of, I don't want to say afraid of reviews, but they're a little concerned. What if I get a negative review?
Right.
What if the review doesn't really talk about the good stuff?
I actually encourage that.
Yeah, we could have 2 sessions just on getting reviews, but they are super powerful. It's the first place that a lot of people go. People also, if I'd had a friend in Aransas Pass and they recommended, hey, you should get Chance Brown. He's a great agent. I would have gone and looked up your profile and read your reviews. I'm not going to just blindly trust what somebody says. Even if my mother gave me a recommendation, I would still vet the person that's being
Absolutely.
recommended.
I mean, the example I use is Amazon. When I go on Amazon, once I say, okay, yeah, that looks like what I want to get, my next stop is the reviews.
Yep. And if there's a 1-star review amidst a bunch of 4- and 5-star reviews, you don't cancel out and eliminate that product. Exactly. Right? There's lots of reasons that people write bad reviews. The vast majority of reviews on Zillow for agents are positive, and that's not because they're fake or they're solicited. It's because that's human nature. People tend to they like to write about their positive experience. Now, they also like to vent about their negative experiences. So that does happen. But the key, and this is kind of a side tip, the key, if you get a negative review, Zillow and most review sites have the ability to reply to a review. Yeah. And if you go and reply to a negative review and you do it without being a jerk and without being condescending, there is data out there. Zillow has it, Redfin's done it, Realtor.com's done it. And even outside of real estate, there's lots of data that shows that the occasional 1- or 2-star review kind of adds legitimacy and validity to all the other reviews. Because a lot of consumers, they go, oh, it's all 5-star, 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 5. These are all, setups.
Nobody's that perfect.
Right. And they're not. Nobody is perfect. And that's what agents really need to understand. And with real estate the way it is, there are so many things that can go wrong in a real estate transaction. And if anything goes south, it's always the agent that gets the blame. The buyer goes and gets a credit card or buys a car 3 days before their mortgage is supposed to close, trashes their credit, the deal falls apart because they can't get financing, the agent gets blamed. Yep. So I get that. So the key is, don't be afraid if you get negative reviews, reply to them. I also think you should reply to all positive reviews, just because it adds, again, more legitimacy and humanity to the reviews. Yeah. So that's super important. So tip number 1, get yourself a free profile, because it is free. And we could talk about lots of other tips. Use a good headshot picture. Don't be holding your cell phone or having a for sale sign. Just that's what people want to see. They don't want to see your dog. They want to see what you look like. Yeah. Good or bad. So get a review or get a profile, include the reviews, and it kind of leads into my second tip. It's kind of a subset of the profile. And that's the component in the profile that allows real estate agents to go in and plug in their sales into their profile, whether they represented a buyer, a seller, or both. Zillow can, through the magic of the internet and through algorithms and whatnot, typically they can figure out if you're the listing agent because they've got the listing, right? So if you have a listing and that listing goes from pending or from active to sold, then it's a fairly good assumption that you were representing the seller in that transaction. It's much more difficult for the algorithms to figure out who the buyer's agent was, because that's really not recorded anywhere that Zillow can see in public data. So tip number 2, you've got to go in and beef up that profile by adding your past sales, because that's another thing that a lot of consumers look at. Again, when you're talking about consumers, buyers or sellers, they don't know you. They can read your profile and go, oh, Chance sounds like a nice guy, seems pretty smart. But sometimes the proof is in the pudding. And the other thing that the Zillow profile does when you enter your past sales is it puts little dots on a map that shows where you sold the home, whether you represented the buyer or the seller. That's a really strong visual appeal to consumers. They can see, what parts of town you work in. And it's really strong way to capture the attention of a potential buyer or seller that's looking at your profile.
Right.
Make
So
sense?
absolutely. One word of disclosure, because I know a lot of people watching this, with me being a Texas realtor, the disclosure is, make sure you're following disclosure laws in your state.
Absolutely.
Price.
Super important. And well, Texas is a great example, right? It's a non-disclosure state.
Exactly.
So
You can still claim the sale, just don't put the price in without
yep.
permission.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't know that consumers focus on the price so much. They really tend to, at least from my experience, both at Zillow and just personally when I was looking for an agent, because I knew when I came down here to Aransas Pass, I wanted a waterfront or, home on a canal. So when I saw an agent that either had sellers or buyers of canal homes, that's what I was looking for personally, because I knew zero, nada about the nuances of buying waterfront property. So I needed my agent to have that knowledge. And a good indicator that she had that knowledge was she bought and sold homes or represented buyers and sellers of waterfront property. And that map just showed it to me, in an instant.
Which is especially important if your office happens to be nowhere close to where you actually work, which is the case for a lot of agents.
It happens a lot.
Who have a, whether it's a virtual office or they have whatever it is, there's an address that's nowhere close to where you actually practice your business.
Yep. 100%.
So yeah, I agree with you there a lot. We, I have an argument going back and forth with some people in the industry a lot, specifically people who make agent websites, that really, if the local association, I'm very fortunate to be with HAR.
It's a great association.
Right? I mean, just the best. So between the profile I have on HAR and the profile I have on Zillow, I'm not 100% sure that I need a personal website.
Yeah,
because
that's a legitimate.
The vast majority of the eyeballs are going to be on one of those two sites, just statistically.
Yep.
So, it's one of those things where, we have them. I have a personal website, but I would be willing to bet you that I get 20 times the traffic between Zillow and HAR.com versus my own personal website.
Yeah,
if no other reason, they've got teams of engineers doing SEO work all the time.
Yep.
So having that profile, having all, having the things like you mentioned a minute ago, having the things that are going to keep people's attention on you for more than 2 seconds, which is the hard part.
It's a really hard part because that's today's consumer, right? It's the on-demand economy. Everybody wants information and they want it right now. I want to be able to pick up my phone and have an Uber sitting out front of my house in 3 minutes. There's that, that instant gratification, so to speak, and that's what drives the consumer mindset today.
Yeah. 100%. So if I can get you to stick on my profile on my site for however long it takes. I mean, if it's more than 5 seconds, I feel good. I feel like I'm one.
Yep.
So, all right. So we got our first two down. Tip number 3.
Tip number 3 is about iBuyers. And I've been talking a lot. I do some speaking on the side, and iBuyers have grabbed a lot of people's attention, both from the industry side, the agents and the brokers and everybody else, and consumers are starting to get into it. I should have done more research. Does Houston have active iBuying? Is Open Door and Zillow Offers there?
Everybody's here.
Yeah, I figured they probably
everybody's here. We obviously saw the pullback that everyone else in the country saw during the COVID-19, just kind of halt. But slowly but surely, I was reading Mike Delfretti's report the other day.
Smart guy.
So smart. But I mean, I think in all of Texas, Zillow bought 60 homes last month or something like that. So it's slowly but surely ramping back up.
Yeah, and that's key. And for people that are listening, watching, whatever they're doing, if the big iBuyers aren't in your market, they probably will be at some point. This is not it's not a fad, it's not a trend, it's not going away. It's iBuying, and I also don't want people. iBuying I don't think is not fundamentally going to shift how most real estate is bought and sold, because it's just basic economics, right? Supply and demand, the market economy, and homes listed on the open market will always get a better price than a seller can get from an iBuyer. But iBuying does have its place. It's super convenient. especially in this pandemic COVID nonsense where everybody's freaking out and afraid to go into a strange house. And, you know, not many people are willing right now, to go into some strange house and open kitchen cabinets and turn on sinks because they're touching and then they touch their face and we're all going to die. So that's kind of changing consumer mindset as well. Zillow has an iBuying program called Zillow Offers. And I think the important thing to know is to understand how iBuyers work, whether it's Zillow or Open Door, or even back years ago, there was the We Buy Ugly Houses people. There have been, since day one of real estate, there have been investors, you know, individual or small investors that will buy properties for cash really fast.
Yeah.
All iBuying is,
if you're willing to take a low enough price, there's somebody that'll buy it.
absolutely. And you know, I have a personal example of when I wished there was iBuyers. This is decades ago, but my grandmother passed away. And in her will, she left her 5 grandchildren. I was one of them. She left us this rental property. It was in the middle of Tennessee. The grandkids were literally spread all over the country. And it was a wonderful gesture for our grandmother to leave us that. But almost within days, it became a big, giant pain in the neck, right? We're like, what are we going to do with this thing? Are we going to rent it? Are we going to sell it? Nobody really wanted to do it. One of the 5 grandkids lived in the town. So they kind of took point and they said, okay, I'll find us a real estate agent and we'll get it listed and we'll sell it and split the money. If iBuyers had been around at that time, we could have jumped online, uploaded some photos, typed in a little bit of information about when the water heater and the roof was replaced, pushed a button, and within days had an offer. Sure, it wouldn't have been the same kind of offer we'd have gotten on the open market, but the 5 of us would have sold that thing in a heartbeat to an iBuyer because it took all of the hassle out. And that's what agents need to understand, and they need to understand how Zillow Offers works, especially if you're in a market where Zillow Offers is active, because Zillow is very good at public relations and at advertising and at building their brand. Again, like them or not, you cannot deny that fact. So consumers are going to become aware that the iBuyer thing is an option for them. So you need to be prepared as a real estate agent to explain how that process works. And I encourage agents, don't just go in with the negatives. You know, don't go in there, they've never seen your home, they don't know what it's worth, you'll get screwed on the price, because that puts the consumer in a negative space. So what you need to do is you need to explain both sides of the process. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? How you can mitigate some of the disadvantages by listing the property, and just have an open and honest conversation with it's typically a seller. Zillow has some great tools and some great content that is on their website. They have an entire page with the links out to other pages about how agents can understand and use iBuying. I should have written it down. It's probably zillow.com/iBuyer or something like that. But if you just Google Zillow Offers, you'll get a ton of information. And it's super important for the real estate agent to understand how that process works, so that they can explain it to the consumer. It kind of goes back to what you said in the very beginning. All this information is out there on the internet. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? It's out there, the consumers have it. So your job has now become to be an interpreter of that information and help the consumer understand all that data. Yeah. And that's a huge value add.
Sift through the static.
Yeah, totally. And I know it's very compelling if you're sitting across from a seller trying to get a listing, and you explain to them in an unbiased manner what their advantages and disadvantages are with iBuying. They will look at you and go, wow, this guy or gal is pretty darn sharp. They know their job, they know their industry, they're confident because they're not afraid to present this information to me that might, in theory, take the business away from them. I did the same thing, related but unrelated. I used to tell sellers all the time when I was on listing presentations, I would say, you need to talk to other agents. Not just me. I would love to list your home, but I'm not going to list your home until you talk to at least 2 more agents, because I want to make sure you're confident that you picked the right person. And I had many people go, you know what, just the fact that you said that means I don't need to talk to anybody else, because if you're telling me to go interview somebody, you're pretty darn confident. You must be pretty good at your job or you wouldn't say that. So that confidence is huge. So understand how iBuyers work, and understand too that you can get commissions and referral fees with Zillow and Opendoor and all the other major iBuyers. They don't just cut agents out of the process. So
That's what I'm just about to bring up, is there is money to be made there.
Absolutely.
And I think
you can
fear that's been, through all the internet groups you used to search, the fear that has been thrown out there, whether it's Zillow or Opendoor or OfferPad or whoever it is that they're, and the truth of the matter is they have said so, they've said as much as that they're trying to get rid of the real estate agent, but it doesn't mean that you haven't procured a buyer.
Yep.
If you have a listing agreement in place, your commission should be protected.
It is.
And most of these companies also do pay referrals out.
Yeah. If you have a listing agreement, you can submit the information to the iBuyers, and your primary job as a listing agent is what? To sell the house, right? That's what you're getting hired to do, is sell the house. The seller doesn't care if you do it by open houses or internet marketing or skywriting. They just want their house sold. That's the job you have. So why not go to these iBuyer sites, get offers, and then you pick up the phone and go, hey, Chance, I got some offers for you. You're doing your job. You take them to them, you explain, these are iBuyer offers. They're probably a little bit lower than you get on Overmarket, but here are some legitimate offers, and you can be under contract in days if this is of interest to you. And you're going to get paid your commission.
Yeah.
Why not?
I had a neighbor, across the street neighbor, that I helped sell his home to an iBuyer because they had a family situation. And it was just one of those things where it made really good sense. But one of the things that I learned through the process of that I was unaware of is you can negotiate with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we negotiated the price up about $9,000 for them.
You can, absolutely.
And so, it ended up working out great for them because it was a weird family thing that just needed to happen.
Yep.
They ended up taking about a $10,000 hickey, but in the end, it was worth it to them because they were able to get exactly what they wanted.
Yep.
And that mattered more.
Yeah. And again, going back to today's consumer mindset, that on-demand instant gratification, people are willing to pay or lose money for that convenience.
That's right.
I mean, they just are. That's just the way it is. So that's
speed, certainty, convenience.
Yep. Tip number 3, understand the iBuyer process. Zillow spells it all out on their website very well. So just dive in and look at it.
There we go. All right, on to number 4.
Number 4 goes back to the Zestimate. And I wanted to get into a little bit of specifics about that, because again, that kind of seems to be the biggest pain point for a lot of agents. And again, I get it. But once again, Zillow themselves provides a ton of information about what the Zestimate is, what it's not, how it's calculated. Now, you're not going to get the formula or the algorithm. Right. It's like the recipe for Coke. It's a secret. But Zillow spells out a lot of the factors that are used and kind of a general understanding of how the Zestimate is created. What Zillow also does is they provide accuracy numbers for their Zestimate. So when you're sitting across that table doing a CMA, and a seller or a potential seller goes, but Zillow says my house is worth this. I tell people, don't start drinking the haterade. You need to back off. And again, in an unbiased, because again, the consumer doesn't give a crap what you think about Zillow. They're just saying, hey, here's this website. It's a big giant website. It looks legit to me. And they're saying my house is worth this. And if you can explain to them how this estimate works, and you don't have to get into big, long, involved engineering conversations.
Right.
You can print out the stuff from Zillow.com and explain it. And Zillow says all over that website that the Zestimate is not a replacement for an agent or agent's opinion of value or an appraisal or anything else. When Zillow buys homes through their Zillow offer program, they start with the Zestimate, but a lot of people go, oh, they just pull the Zestimate up and that's what they're going to offer you. That's not how it works. Which again is why you need to understand how iBuying works. How do they derive their price? It's the same thing with the Zestimate. Zillow themselves on their website shows the accuracy and the fact that it's kind of a base starting point. It's really good for looking at trends in prices, but they don't. The intent is not to price the home to the dollar. So agents need to understand, yes, There are people that blindly believe the Zestimate is the value of their home. Really, all you have to do is kind of show them the data, say, look, there's ranges, here's the accuracy. Zillow cannot come in and smell your house. They can't tell that the neighbor across the street has a pickup truck up on blocks in the driveway. The roof's falling off the house next door. These are all things that a Zestimate can't see. And most people, in my experience, both as an agent and a broker and as a Zillow employee, most people get it. And use the line, it's not a appraisal, it's a Zestimate. It's an estimate of your home value. And even if you get the biggest engineering nerd in the country that loves data and spreadsheets and all that stuff, and the Zillow and algorithms, you can show them Zillow's own data that has the accuracy and explains to them what it is. And again, it's another way that the agent can prove their expertise and their value to the consumer. Having someone sit across from you and say, but Zillow says that my house is worth X, that's an advantage for you. It gives you a step in the door. It gives you a chance to display your knowledge. So use it.
There's an article out there, if anybody wants to Google it. It was from the Houston Chronicle, as it turns out, by Rebecca Schutz, who's one of their real estate reporters. And she was at Inman Connect in Las Vegas, and there was a panel of all the iBuyer heads, right? So Zillow was there, Open Door, OfferPad, they were all there. And her question to the panel, specifically to Zillow, was, when you buy and sell homes, do you use this estimate to determine price? And even that guy was like, no, we have local professionals on the ground who help us determine price. And
they use an agent doing a CMA.
Exactly. So that's the kind of ammunition when somebody talks to me about that, is I'm like, look, just like you said, it's an estimate. That's all it is. Even they don't use it. Here's the proof.
Yeah, and Zillow's actually, that's a really good point, because Zillow's entry into buying homes through their Zillow Offers iBuyer program is all you need to combat that Zestimate thing. You can say, you know what, Zillow buys homes, they don't even price them. And Zillow lists homes, they don't price by Zestimate. It was never intended for that. Now, through the brilliance of the marketing, the PR machine that's at Zillow, Zillow's become a verb. Zestimates, 95% of the humans out there know what their Zestimate is. The other thing, kind of similar to in the Zestimate tip, if you're going on a CMA, you better look up the home on Zillow, see what the Zestimate is before you even walk into the seller's door, because they will have looked at it. So again, there's just another super simple thing to do. The guy says, well, but Zillow says my home is worth, and you go, $247,983. I looked it up because I'm a sharp real estate agent. And I know my stuff. So
perfect. All right, so there's taking us through the 4 free things that we can use to our advantage.
Profile, past sales, Zillow Offers, and Zestimate.
So number 5 is understanding the Premier Agent program, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying, hey, pick up the phone and get out your credit card and go buy advertising with Zillow. But again, it's just one of those things that's super helpful to understand how it works. And really fundamentally, Zillow sells impression-based advertising. They get ridiculous amounts of traffic. And if you've hopefully there's not a real estate agent out there that's never been to Zillow. You need to go look at the website. Again, if for no other reason your customers are looking at the website. But right there on the right-hand side of the page, well, depending on whether you're on mobile or not, somewhere on the page, there's a list or 3 or 4 heads. Right, there's the listing agent and then 3 Premier Agents underneath them. Premier Agent is just a marketing name for an agent that advertises on Zillow. And you buy a certain percentage of impressions and zip code, and you get contacts. That's really fundamentally how it works. Now, people have asked, a lot of times I get asked, what was the one thing that surprised you the most when you went to work at Zillow? And hands down, it was how well Zillow advertising works. And again, I don't work there anymore. I'm not trying to sell you a thing, but it cannot be denied that if you are a good lead converter, and we can talk about that a little bit, but if you are good at converting internet leads, you can do very well. You can have a really good return on investment with a Zillow ad buy. He
is being a good lead converter.
Yeah, that's the key. Now, if you're not going to jump on a lead as soon, or contact as soon as it comes in. If you don't have systems in place to continually reach out and ping that person, you won't be successful with Zillow. But you won't be successful with any internet-based advertising. That's just the nature of the beast. That's
we
whether
talk
you
about
run.
it. We talk about it pretty regularly that, yeah, the industry doesn't have a lead generation problem. It has a lead conversion problem. But what we hear is, oh, those leads suck. Those are terrible leads. And the reality is, well, maybe you suck.
You know, as a broker, I had a small independent, and then I would have my blog that you mentioned earlier generated a lot of leads, and they're just the same. They're the same leads that Zillow generates. They're internet-based. People are searching. They land. They click a button. Contact me. That's the kind of lead it is. And I would have and I divvied them up amongst my agents randomly, but they all got roughly the same number. And I would have an agent come in and go, "Man, the leads suck. I haven't converted a single one." I'd say, "Well, you know what? Shar over there is converting 7% of her leads. You're converting 0% of your leads. The problem isn't the leads. It's what you're doing with them. When she's doing something right and or you're doing something not necessarily wrong, but maybe not optimal." So understanding those fundamentals about how to convert that type of lead can make or break you with Zillow advertising.
The other part of that, I think, is also that there's this misunderstanding of urgency, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that many agents believe that if somebody's going to take the time to go to Zillow, look at homes, click on a button for more information, that means they're ready to buy right now.
Yeah, they think that.
When in reality, it could be a year or more. I think the last time that I talked to Kurt Beardsley at Zillow, he told me that the average time from clicking that button to raising their hand in the Zillow CRM was 13.2 months.
That sounds right. I mean, it's a year, 2 years. I sold houses to people that first went on my blog, and 3 years later, my phone would ring and they'd be like, "Hey, it's Chance." And I'm like, "Who the hell is Chance? Chance who?" And I've been on your website for a while, and I'm kind of in the background trying to figure out who they are. And come to find out, they've been getting my drip email campaigns for the last 2.5 years. And sometimes they open them and sometimes they don't. But yeah, it's not an instant thing. In fact, internet leads, just generally speaking, tend to be further down the funnel. It takes a while for things to filter out. Not always. I mean, I also got leads from my blog where people said, "Come bring listing paperwork over tonight." So there can be some things, but the key is to respond quickly. Or sometimes I think the key is just to respond. When I was looking for my agent in Aransas Pass, I didn't use the Zillow system to send them information. I got their email address and I emailed them. And I contacted 3 agents. One of them called me, the one we ended up picking, was the first one to respond, but it probably took her a day to get back to me. But a lot of consumers want to answer in 5 minutes, but most people understand that I understand agents have lives. I wasn't freaking out that nobody had contacted me the first day. The second person finally contacted me literally the day after we closed on the house. My phone rings and it was, "Hey, it's whatever, Mike. I'm calling, you were inquiring about an agent." I'm like, "Yeah, 5 weeks ago, we found an agent. She's shopping right now with her commission check that she earned from us." The third one that I contacted, still haven't heard from, and never will, which is crazy. But so I think agents can benefit from Zillow, not just by stroking a check, getting out the credit card, but by understanding how Zillow operates, how internet-based leads and marketing works. And that's kind of in the same tip. Zillow, again, I will sing their praises of their employees because A, a lot of them are my friends, but B, they hire really, really, really sharp people. So, and you said it in your introduction, I loved it. Watch what Zillow does. Look at their face. If you're a Facebook ad person, Zillow makes some kick-ass Facebook ads. Steal from them. Now, don't go and steal the pictures, steal the concept. Watch what they do. And just by watching Zillow, you can learn a whole lot about that crack marketing and PR team and how they work.
Well, and I was going to bring it up as kind of a bonus tip to this episode is, and I did not know this until Errol Samuelson and Kurt Beardsley were here in Houston talking about it last year or year before. In fact, unfortunately, I found out right before we went on to record this. I was supposed to see them this week, and we weren't going. They're not coming because of the hurricane that's coming. So,
Always so.
yeah. So, which, I mean, those are two of, if you don't know who Errol Samuelson and Kurt Beardsley are, two of the smartest guys in the industry. But
They're
I mean,
crazy smart.
brilliant.
Yeah.
But Zillow.com/research.
Oh,
That page has got so much data and so much information that agents can take and use to build marketing messaging, to build lead capture systems. There's so much stuff on that page that I think it's because of the Zillow haters, there's just not people using it to their advantage, and they really ought to be.
And it is free. It's out there. They don't care if you grab a chart off their site and plug it into your newsletter or your website or whatever. Yeah, and it is. And a lot of people also, oh, it's Zillow data. Zillow has
a lot of eyeballs on Zillow. I'll take their data.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's exactly it. The consumers there looking at it, you might as well take it too. And trust, I worked at Zillow. I walked the office floor, and you see this gigantic office building, and there's 40 PhD data scientists sitting over in a corner cranking out some of this data. And again, these are crazy smart people. I think I'm a pretty bright guy, and I can't tell you how many times I sat in meetings at Zillow and went, wow, man, these people, I am just going to sit back here and please don't call on me, because you guys are on a whole different plane of intelligence. And it's data scientists and economists, and I mean, there's people that used to teach classes at Harvard that are now digging up data for Zillow. Don't discount their data just because you don't like their business model. Take it and use it. I mean, it's there, it's free, and you're exactly right. There's a bunch of people that either don't know it's there or think it's tainted in some way and won't use it. There's some wonderful data out there. People struggle. Where do I put in my newsletter? I don't know what to put. Go to Zillow and grab some market snapshots and some maps and some charts and plug it in and send it away.
Yep. There you go.
That's it.
All right. Top 5 ways to take advantage of Zillow. Jay, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking some time out of retirement to come and chat with me today. Honestly, it's been one of those, like I said, one of those people that I followed early on in my career that I don't know if I hadn't stolen from you and Chris Smith and a few other people out there that I'd still be in the industry. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to finally meet you virtually and spend a little bit of time with you.
We're not that far away. Come down to Ranges Pass. We'll go fishing.
I know. Go fishing. I'm going to sit here and watch your kayak photos on Facebook. So thank you for taking the time to watch today. We'll be back in a couple